"Don't board that aircraft. It's been compromised." The desperate shout sliced through the scorching Arizona heat like lightning through storm clouds. For one heart-stopping moment, everything froze. The private jet's engines continued their steady whine at the far end of Phoenix Sky Harbor's executive terminal, its pristine silver body gleaming under the desert sun. Security personnel reacted first, 4 men in dark suits with earpieces, their hands instinctively moving toward concealed weapons. Then the flight crew turned, followed by the maintenance staff. Finally, Alexander Sterling himself looked up from his position at the top of the aircraft's stairs. At 74, Sterling commanded attention without trying. His charcoal suit was perfectly tailored, his silver hair impeccably styled, and his steel-gray eyes missed nothing. He was a man who had built an empire from spare parts and determination. No loose ends, no overlooked details. Except now, as he squinted against the afternoon glare, those calculating eyes focused on something completely unexpected. A young girl. She couldn't have been more than 12 years old, barely tall enough to reach the landing gear of Sterling's Bombardier Global 7500. Her faded red t-shirt was dusty, her worn sneakers had seen better days, and her dark ponytail bounced as she sprinted across the restricted tarmac with no security badge, no escort, just pure, desperate determination. "Stop that plane!" she screamed again, her voice cracking with urgency. "Please, check the rear maintenance panel. There's something wrong." A security guard lunged forward, catching her just as she reached the aircraft's tail section. She didn't struggle or fight back. Instead, she pointed with a trembling finger toward a specific access panel and cried out, "There! It's not closed properly. Something's been added that doesn't belong." One of the mechanics, startled by her specific knowledge, turned to look where she was pointing. The other security personnel were already radioing for backup, their voices tense and professional. Sterling remained motionless at the top of the stairs, studying the girl with the intensity of a man who had survived in business by trusting his instincts. There was something about her desperate certainty that cut through his usual skepticism. Her eyes, wide with terror, but absolutely honest, told him this wasn't a prank or attention-seeking behavior. "Rodriguez," he called softly to his head of security, who had just reached the base of the stairs. "Hold the departure." "Sir?" Rodriguez hesitated, glancing at the girl. "She's just a kid. Probably some kind of—" Sterling's voice dropped to that dangerous quiet tone his employees knew well. "I said check the panel." The access point she indicated. What would you do in Sterling's position? Trust the word of a mysterious child, or dismiss it as an elaborate hoax? Minutes later, a maintenance technician and 2 security guards knelt beneath the aircraft, guided by the girl's frantic but precise instructions. The technician's expression shifted rapidly from annoyance to confusion, then to alarm. "There's a device here," he muttered into his radio, his voice tight with professional concern. "Unknown electronic component, definitely not standard equipment. Red indicator light, timer display, wiring that doesn't match our schematics." In the silence that followed, a desert hawk circled overhead, its cry piercing the tension-filled air. Everyone remained frozen as the implications sank in. Sterling descended the stairs slowly, his eyes never leaving the girl. "Release her," he ordered quietly. The guard holding her arm looked uncertain. "Sir, she violated security protocols. I said release her." He approached the girl himself, noting how she stood trembling but defiant, small hands clenched into fists. A smudge of dirt across her left cheek from her desperate sprint across the tarmac. "What's your name?" he asked gently. "Sophia," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "Sophia Rodriguez." His eyebrows lifted slightly. "You're local?" She nodded quickly. "I live on Cactus Ridge Drive. I was monitoring the aviation frequencies last night. It's a hobby my dad taught me. This morning, I heard something wrong in the maintenance chatter. So I came early and saw that panel wasn't secured properly. Sterling studied her more intently. Your father. He works in aviation. Sophia's expression darkened. He was a test pilot. Marcus Rodriguez. He died 3 years ago in what they called a systems malfunction. But I never believed it was an accident. Sterling's face went completely still. He knew that name. Marcus Rodriguez had been one of the most promising pilots in the industry before his tragic crash. Without another word, Sterling extended his hand. Sophia hesitated for a moment, then took it. Echoes from the past that evening. The small ranch house on Cactus Ridge Drive felt heavy with unspoken tension. The kitchen smelled of fresh tamales and strong coffee, while an old ceiling fan clicked rhythmically in the fading desert light. Carmen Rodriguez, Sophia's grandmother, placed a steaming bowl of pozole on the scarred wooden table. Her weathered hands moved with practiced efficiency, but her dark eyes held worry lines that hadn't been there that morning. Sit, Maija, Carmen finally said, pulling out a chair. Eat something. Your hands are shaking like leaves in a storm. I'm not hungry, abuela, Sophia murmured, her eyes still wide with the day's events. I keep seeing those wires, that timer. I wasn't wrong, was I? Maybe not, Carmen replied, stirring her own bowl thoughtfully. But there are dangerous waters you don't go swimming in, child. Some secrets have teeth. Before Sophia could respond, 3 sharp knocks echoed from the front door. Both of them froze. Carmen rose slowly, instinctively reaching for the aluminum baseball bat she kept behind the pantry door. When she opened it, her jaw dropped slightly. Standing on the porch was Alexander Sterling. Not in his usual business attire, but wearing a simple white button-down shirt tucked into dark jeans, with a soft leather messenger bag slung over his shoulder. Good evening, Mrs. Rodriguez, he said politely. I hope I'm not intruding on your dinner. You're that man from the news, Carmen said, her voice thick with suspicion, and her slight Mexican accent more pronounced. He nodded respectfully. That's correct. And what would a man like you want with my granddaughter? Just a conversation, if that's acceptable. I believe she may have saved my life today. The question hanging in the desert air. What does a billionaire aerospace mogul want with a 12-year-old girl who lives in a modest neighborhood? Inside, the living room was dimly lit by a single lamp. Sterling declined the offered iced tea, and Carmen didn't offer it again. Sophia sat on the edge of the worn sofa, the school backpack still strapped to her shoulders. You noticed the panel was loose, Sterling said, watching her face carefully. Yes, sir. And you heard unusual radio chatter? She nodded. It was strange, like encoded signals bleeding into the maintenance frequency. I tracked the source this morning, and that's when I saw the panel. But you didn't tell any adults first. Sophia's voice grew smaller. I tried, but nobody listens to kids. Especially not when they talk about airplanes and technical stuff. Carmen cleared her throat. Sir, if this is about thanking her, you've done that. But we're not interested in publicity or whatever complications might follow. I understand completely, Sterling said gently. And I agree, this isn't about media attention. I came to offer something, and to share something important. He opened his messenger bag and removed a thick envelope. This is a full scholarship to the Southwest Aviation Academy, flight training, aerospace engineering, mentorship programs, access to our advanced simulation systems. Sophia's lips parted in shock. Sterling continued, turning to face her directly. I also knew your father. Not personally, but I met him at an industry conference 2 years before his accident. He presented findings on navigation system vulnerabilities with more clarity and insight than engineers twice his age. That presentation stayed with me. Carmen's defensive posture softened slightly. Marcus Rodriguez was a brilliant man who died with too many unanswered questions. Sterling's gaze dropped for a moment. I'd like to help find those answers, but only if you're both willing to help me understand something crucial. Help you with what? Sophia asked, her heart pounding. He leaned forward, his expression growing grave. Help me understand why someone wanted me dead today, and whether it's connected to what happened to your father. Dangerous revelations. The morning sun hadn't yet burned through the Phoenix haze when a black Range Rover with tinted windows pulled up outside the modest Rodriguez home. Carmen stood on the small front porch, arms crossed, her floral robe catching the desert breeze. Inside, the coffee pot gurgled with fresh brew. In the back seat of the SUV, Sophia sat ramrod straight, her red t-shirt replaced by clean jeans and a jacket that was slightly too large. She clutched a spiral notebook to her chest, its pages filled with sketches of aircraft components, circuit diagrams, and frequency patterns that no other kid at her school would even recognize. Sterling remained silent for the first several minutes of the drive, staring out at the desert landscape, while his fingers drummed softly against the leather armrest. Sophia watched him through the rearview mirror, waiting for some explanation. "You were right," he finally said, his voice cutting through the silence. "The device you spotted was military-grade, remotely triggered, designed to simulate a catastrophic hydraulic failure during flight. No survivors, no debris field large enough to investigate properly, no uncomfortable questions." Sophia's grip tightened on her notebook. "So someone really did want you eliminated." Sterling nodded grimly. "And they knew exactly how to do it without leaving fingerprints." The SUV turned down a long private road lined with mesquite trees and high-security fencing before reaching the fortified perimeter of Sterling Aerospace Research Facility. To Sophia, it looked like something from a science fiction movie. Gleaming white buildings, multiple security checkpoints, and guards who looked more like special forces operatives than typical corporate security. Inside the main building, everything smelled like ozone and polished metal. A curved wall displayed photographs of test pilots, flight engineers, and aerospace innovators spanning several decades. Sophia noticed immediately that her father's face wasn't among them. "He worked here, didn't he?" she asked as they entered a sleek elevator. Sterling paused, his thumb hovering over the floor selection buttons. "Yes, your father was one of our most promising systems analysts. He was working on a revolutionary navigation upgrade called SkyGuide Pro, designed to guide aircraft through GPS-denied environments with millimeter precision. If successful, it would have revolutionized both civilian and military aviation." "Then why isn't his picture on that wall?" Sterling looked away. "That's part of what we're going to make right." The tension builds. What really happened to Marcus Rodriguez? And why was his contribution erased from company history? The conference room was austere but impressive, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the test runway where a sleek trainer aircraft was being prepared for flight. On the polished table sat a small black device identical to what had been found on Sterling's plane, along with several manila folders. A middle-aged man with graying temples and laugh lines around his eyes stood as they entered. "Sophia, I'd like you to meet Colonel James Mitchell, retired Air Force. He was your father's mentor and current director of our youth aviation program." Mitchell offered a firm handshake. "You have your father's eyes and his attention to detail. He used to sit in that exact chair, sketching aircraft cross-sections during our technical briefings." Sophia sat quietly as Sterling opened one of the folders and slid it across to her. Inside were copies of her father's final performance evaluations, glowing recommendations, notes about his exceptional analytical skills, and commendations for his safety-first approach. The second folder contained detailed schematics of the SkyGuide Pro system. "There were problems," Mitchell said carefully. "The system would occasionally provide false readings during certain atmospheric conditions. Your father identified these flaws early in testing, but management wanted to push forward with the timeline." Sophia's voice was barely audible. "And then his plane crashed." Sterling nodded. "The official investigation listed it as equipment failure, but several things never made sense. His emergency beacon never activated. His final radio transmission was incomplete, and the wreckage pattern didn't match the supposed failure mode. You think it's connected to what happened to you? I'm certain of it now. Sterling pointed to a component in the SkyGuide Pro schematics. This interface module. It's identical to the architecture of the device planted on my aircraft. Mitchell leaned forward. Same design philosophy, same electronic signature. Someone with intimate knowledge of our systems is behind both incidents. Sophia flipped through the technical drawings with growing recognition. This control pathway here. I've seen this exact configuration before. My dad had sketches of something similar hidden in his workshop at home. Sterling and Mitchell exchanged meaningful glances. Then it's worse than we thought, Sterling said quietly. This goes back much further than we realized. Hidden truths after lunch in the company cafeteria. Grilled chicken sandwiches and fresh lemonade, which Sterling insisted on sharing with her. They walked to a hangar on the far side of the testing complex. Inside, under a protective canvas cover, sat a pristine Piper Cherokee 180. Sophia's breath caught as the familiar scent of aviation fuel triggered a flood of memories. Her father teaching her to identify aircraft by their engine sounds, explaining the physics of flight with paper airplanes, letting her sit in the pilot's seat of his small plane while he went through pre-flight checklists. She's yours for training, Sterling said simply. 3 sessions per week. Colonel Mitchell will be your instructor. But I haven't flown since. Sophia's voice trailed off. Since your father died, Mitchell finished gently. Then it's time to remember what he taught you. They went through a basic pre-flight inspection together, Mitchell calling out each item while Sophia moved through the checklist, like the procedures had never left her muscle memory. Control surfaces, oil levels, fuel systems, tire pressure. You've got the instincts, Mitchell murmured approvingly. Just like Marcus. Before they secured the aircraft, Sterling handed her a sealed envelope, aged and slightly yellowed around the edges. Your father left this with me the last time we spoke, about a week before his accident. I never opened it. I think it was meant for you. Sophia took it with trembling hands. Her name was written on the front in her father's neat, careful handwriting. I don't know what's inside, Sterling said quietly, but something tells me you're ready to find out. The mystery deepens. What final message did Marcus Rodriguez leave for his daughter? That night, Sophia sat cross-legged on her bedroom floor, while desert crickets chirped beyond her window. The envelope lay in her lap, still sealed, while her grandmother dozed on the living room couch with a half-finished crossword puzzle on her chest. With careful fingers, Sophia peeled back the aged tape. Inside was a folded letter and a small USB drive. She read the note silently first, then whispered the words aloud. If you're reading this, Sophia, I'm sorry I couldn't tell you everything in person. The navigation system they're testing isn't safe. Someone is deliberately covering up critical flaws. If anything happens to me, take this drive to someone you trust, someone who understands aviation. And always trust your instincts, Mija. They'll guide you better than any instrument panel. Love always, Papi. Tears blurred her vision as she plugged the USB drive into her laptop. Folders appeared on screen. Test logs, error analysis, SkyGuide anomalies, and final report, confidential. Inside were video files of cockpit footage showing system malfunctions, error logs with timestamps, and her father's calm, professional voice narrating the problems he discovered. The evidence was overwhelming, and someone had killed him for it. A sharp knock at the front door made her jump. She checked the clock, 10:23 p.m. Too late for neighbors, too early for emergencies. Moving quietly to the hallway, she peeked out the front window. No car in the driveway, no figure on the porch. Just the soft sound of metal scratching against metal near the back gate, then complete silence. Someone had been there. Someone was watching. The vault the next morning, the house on Cactus Ridge Drive, felt different. Charged with an invisible tension, as if the very air had changed overnight. Carmen Rodriguez stood at the kitchen sink, methodically washing dishes, while her eyes kept drifting toward the window that overlooked their small backyard. The chain-link fence, half hidden by climbing bougainvillea, appeared undisturbed. But she hadn't imagined those sounds last night, and neither had Sofia. "Abuela," Sofia said, entering the kitchen with the USB drive clutched in her palm. "I think someone was outside last night. They knocked, then just disappeared." Carmen dried her hands on a faded dish towel, her expression hardening. "You didn't open the door?" "Of course not." Carmen nodded once, then walked to the hallway closet without another word. Reaching up to the highest shelf, she pulled down a small metal box that had been hidden behind old photo albums. Inside was a bank key, thin silver, and worn smooth from handling. "What's that?" Sofia asked. "Your father's insurance policy," Carmen replied quietly. 3 days before he died, he came here with storm clouds in his eyes. Said if anything ever happened to him, I should wait 1 year, then open his safety deposit box at the bank. But that was 3 years ago, and now I think we've waited long enough. By noon, they stood inside the marble-floored interior of Desert Community Bank, their footsteps echoing softly. Carmen slid the key across to the vault officer, who checked it against his records before leading them into the private viewing room. Box 247 was dusty and untouched. Carmen lifted the lid with careful hands. Inside, a fireproof document case, a folded note, and a faded photograph of Sofia as a toddler, sitting on the wing of her father's small airplane, both of them grinning at the camera. "Let's take everything home," Carmen said quietly. "We don't open it here. The stakes rise. What secrets did Marcus Rodriguez hide away, and why did he know he was in danger?" Back in their living room with the blinds drawn tight, Carmen placed the document case on the coffee table. Sofia sat beside her, legs bouncing with nervous energy. The 6-digit combination was Sofia's birthday. The lock clicked open with a soft mechanical sound. Inside, another USB drive, a leather-bound notebook, and a sealed envelope marked "Confidential, Alexander Sterling only." "Looks like this was meant for your new friend," Carmen observed. Sofia reached for the notebook first, flipping through pages of technical drawings, system diagnostics, and error code charts with annotations in red ink. Then she found a handwritten entry that made her blood run cold. "Tested SkyGuide firmware 3.7 again today. Same false altitude readings during simulated solar flare conditions. Recommended halting deployment until fixed. Victor Harrison, CTO, insists on proceeding to save timeline. Refused to sign off. Harrison becoming increasingly hostile about delays." "Victor Harrison," Sofia whispered. "I've heard that name." "Where?" "At Sterling's facility yesterday. He was in a meeting I passed. Tall, thin, cold eyes. Something about him made me uncomfortable." Carmen took a deep breath. "Sofia, this is serious business. This isn't a school science project. This is whistleblower-level evidence. Your father was documenting what he believed was criminal negligence." "I know, Abuela. He didn't just crash. He was murdered." Just then, Sofia's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Maintenance Hangar C, 7 p.m. tonight. Come alone. Important information about your father. Don't involve Sterling." Sofia showed the message to Carmen, whose face went pale. "This could be him," Sofia said. "The person who's been watching us." Carmen's grip tightened around her granddaughter's wrist. "You are absolutely not going anywhere alone." "I'm not planning to," Sofia replied, "but we need professional help. Real help." At 3:00 p.m., they were parked outside Colonel Mitchell's Adobe-style home on the outskirts of Phoenix. A windsock fluttered above his driveway beside a restored P-51 Mustang propeller mounted on a wooden stand. Mitchell answered the door in an Arizona State University sweatshirt, his expression immediately serious at the sight of them holding the document case. "We found something," Sofia said without preamble. "Something that changes everything." He let them inside, and they spread the documents across his dining room table. Mitchell read quickly, his trained eyes scanning the technical data with growing alarm. "This proves Marcus warned them repeatedly about system failures," he said grimly. "And this," he held up the USB drive. "This could bring down the entire Skyguide program." Sophia told him about the mysterious text message and the warning not to involve Sterling. Mitchell's expression darkened. "I know that hangar. It's been abandoned since 2018. No security cameras, completely isolated. If someone's trying to lure you there, it's not for a friendly conversation." He stood abruptly and walked to a locked gun safe, pulling out a military-issue satellite phone. "I'm calling Special Agent Lisa Cortez, FBI. She worked with your father once on a military contractor safety investigation. She's trustworthy and doesn't scare easily." He looked at Sophia seriously. "But you're staying here tonight. No more lone wolf missions." Sophia hesitated. "I have to finish what he started." "And you will," Mitchell said firmly. "But not by walking into an ambush." The truth emerges that evening. While Carmen prepared her famous green chili stew, her traditional comfort food for times of crisis, Sophia sat in her room, reading her father's hidden notes for the dozenth time. The words seemed to burn off the page. "Someone is systematically altering my test data. They think I don't notice the changes, but I document everything. Harrison offered me a promotion and a significant raise to stop asking questions. I refused." Her fingers trembled as she opened a computer file she'd missed before, labeled Final Flight Recording. She hesitated, then clicked play. Her father's voice filled the room, calm and professional. Skyguide showing navigation drift again. Altimeter reading 8,000 feet, but visual confirms we're below cloud layer. This is definitely a system malfunction. Switching to manual controls. Wait. The audio crackled with static, then a different voice, cold and unfamiliar. Execute phase 2. Make it look accidental. Then came the sound of impact. Sophia stared at the screen, her heart hammering against her ribs. That second voice wasn't her father's. Someone else had been on the radio frequency during his final moments. Someone orchestrating his death. "Sophia," Carmen called from the kitchen. "Someone's at the door." She rushed to the front window and saw Alexander Sterling standing under their porch light, this time wearing a concerned expression and carrying a manila folder under his arm. "Good evening, Mrs. Rodriguez," he said when Carmen opened the door. "I apologize for the late hour, but something urgent has come to light. We may all be in immediate danger." The screen door creaked as Sterling stepped inside, declining Carmen's offer of coffee with a polite shake of his head. "I just received a call from the FBI," he said without preamble. "They've confirmed my worst fears. The Skyguide Pro system that your father died trying to expose. It was approved for installation last month, despite all the documented safety issues. It's already been installed in 12 commercial aircraft." Sophia's face went white. Even with all the errors. "Someone falsified the final safety reports," Sterling confirmed. "Which means your father's death wasn't just murder. It was the better test for a much larger conspiracy." The room fell silent except for the hum of the air conditioning and the distant sound of traffic on the highway. Carmen's voice was steady but deadly quiet. "I think it's time we went to the authorities with everything we know." Sterling nodded. "Agreed. But first, there's something else. I received intelligence that suggests Victor Harrison isn't working alone. There's someone else inside my company, someone with access to our highest security systems." "Who?" Sophia asked. "I'm not certain yet, but whoever it is has been monitoring our communications. They know about our investigation." Sophia pulled out her phone and showed him the anonymous text message about meeting at Hangar C. Sterling's expression became grim. "That's not a message from an informant. That's bait." "But what if whoever sent it really does have information about my father?" "Then we'll get that information," Sterling said, "but not by walking into a trap alone. The desert wind had picked up by the time they reached the abandoned section of Phoenix Mesa Gateway Airport that evening. Hangar C stood like a metal ghost at the far edge of the property, a remnant from the facility's military days, now forgotten and deteriorating under the Arizona sun. Sophia didn't go alone. She rode in Colonel Mitchell's pickup truck, parked 200 yards away, while Sterling waited in position with Special Agent Cortez and her tactical team. All of them were connected by radio, and Sophia wore a nearly invisible microphone woven into her jacket collar. "You sure about this?" Mitchell asked as she checked the radio connection one final time. "I have to know," Sophia replied. "If someone's ready to kill me like they killed my father, I want to see their face." She walked toward the hangar alone, the desert gravel crunching under her sneakers. Inside, the air was stale and smelled like rust and old motor oil. Broken equipment cast long shadows in the dim light filtering through dirty windows. She waited. 1 minute, 2 minutes. Then the sound of footsteps echoed from the darkness. A figure emerged from behind a stack of abandoned aircraft parts. Tall, thin, wearing an expensive gray suit despite the desert heat. Victor Harrison stepped into the light with his hands clasped behind his back, like a professor about to deliver a lecture. "I wondered if you'd have the courage to come," he said smoothly. "Bravery and foolishness often look identical at your age." Sophia kept her voice steady. "You knew my father." "I respected him immensely," Harrison replied. "Brilliant mind, unfortunately coupled with an inconvenient moral compass." Her stomach twisted. "You killed him." Harrison gave what might have been a sad smile. "He made a choice. I offered him wealth, career advancement, the opportunity to be part of something revolutionary. He chose righteousness instead." "So you murdered him?" "I solved the problem." Harrison stepped closer, the click of his expensive shoes echoing in the empty space. "You have that same stubborn streak, I'm told. Sterling thinks he can use you to expose our work, but he's miscalculated. I'm not afraid of you." Harrison reached behind the abandoned equipment and produced a small black device identical to the bomb found on Sterling's aircraft. "You should be. When they find this in your backpack tomorrow, along with evidence of your obsession with aircraft sabotage, the investigation will close." A troubled child, traumatized by her father's death, finally snapping under pressure. "The FBI won't believe that. They'll believe what the evidence tells them." Harrison's cold confidence faltered slightly as Sophia smiled. "What's amusing about this situation?" "You assumed I came alone," she said, tapping the microphone on her collar. Outside, the sound of vehicles roaring to life filled the desert air. Agent Cortez and her team burst through both entrances of the hangar simultaneously, weapons drawn, shouting commands. "Hands where we can see them, FBI." Harrison froze, still holding the explosive device, his calculated composure finally cracking. "Clever girl," he said bitterly, "just like your father." Justice takes flight 3 months later. The Arizona sky stretched endlessly blue above the quiet airfield outside Phoenix. It was a Saturday morning that tasted like new beginnings, clear, warm, with just enough breeze to make the windsocks dance lazily in the distance. Sophia Rodriguez stood on the sun-warmed tarmac, carefully lacing her new flight boots. The wind tugged gently at her crisp white shirt, which now bore a Sterling Aerospace Academy patch on the left shoulder. Beneath it, her name was embroidered in bold blue letters, S. Rodriguez. The familiar scent of aviation fuel and heated asphalt filled her nostrils as she walked toward the hangar where the Piper Cherokee waited, its nose pointed toward the horizon like an arrow ready to fly. The aircraft had been meticulously maintained, polished until it gleamed, prepared for this moment. Colonel Mitchell leaned against the hangar doorframe, arms crossed, his aviator sunglasses reflecting the morning light. "You've logged the required hours, passed all your examinations, and demonstrated exceptional situational awareness. Are you ready for your first solo flight?" Sophia grinned, the nervousness in her stomach transforming into excitement. I've been ready since the day I ran across that tarmac screaming about a bomb. Mitchell chuckled. Your father's first solo flight was from this same runway, same wind direction. He was about your age too. He handed her a carefully folded flight plan. Route approved and filed with air traffic control. Then, without another word, he stepped back to give her space. Inside the cockpit, everything felt like coming home. The familiar hum of anticipation, the pre-flight checklist in her lap, the headset crackling to life in her ears. Her hands moved through the procedures with muscle memory that came from both training and genetics. Before starting the engine, she pulled out a small laminated photograph from her shirt pocket. Her father in his pilot's uniform, grinning with wind-blown hair and grease stains on his hands. His arm wrapped around a curly-haired little girl holding a toy airplane. She clipped it to the instrument panel where she could see it. Flying with me today, Pappy, she whispered, then turned the ignition key. The engine rode to life with a sound that made her soul sing. The moment of truth. Will Sophia conquer her fears and honor her father's memory by taking to the skies alone? Down below on the observation deck, Carmen stood in the shade of the hangar, one hand pressed to her heart. Sterling stood beside her in a casual blazer, flanked by members of the press and several aviation industry dignitaries. A banner behind them read, "The Marcus Rodriguez Memorial Flight Program, dedicated to aviation safety and truth." Agent Cortez had given a brief statement to the media earlier. The FBI had officially confirmed that Victor Harrison had been convicted on multiple charges including conspiracy to commit murder, falsification of federal safety records, and domestic terrorism. The Skyvide Pro system had been immediately grounded pending a complete safety overhaul. But none of the politics and press conferences mattered to Sophia right now. She was where she belonged, in the pilot's seat, with clear skies ahead, and her father's memory as her co-pilot. The Cherokee climbed steadily into the desert air, Phoenix shrinking beneath her into a patchwork of streets and rooftops that blurred into the browns and greens of late spring. Her hands gripped the controls with confidence, her eyes systematically scanning instruments and sky with the thoroughness her father had taught her. At 4,500 feet, she leveled off, checked her heading, and switched to the local traffic frequency. Then softly, she heard it. Not a real voice, she knew, but the memory of her father's guidance. Remember, Mija, fly the airplane, not your emotions. Trust your training, but always trust your instincts first. She smiled through tears of joy and pride. Back on the ground, the crowd watched her every maneuver. Carmen turned to Sterling, her voice thick with emotion. "She did more than save your life, you know." "I know," he replied quietly. "She saved the integrity of an entire industry. She saved the truth." He paused, watching Sophia bank gracefully for her landing approach. "More importantly, she saved me from becoming the kind of man who lets good people die for profit margins." As Sophia lined up for her landing, the runway stretched out below like a promise fulfilled. The wheels touched down with a gentle thud, perfectly centered, exactly as her father had taught her. She rolled to a stop and powered down the engine. When she opened the cockpit door, applause erupted like thunder across the desert air. Friends, reporters, Mitchell, Agent Cortez, all of them cheering. But her eyes found one person first. Carmen, her grandmother, who didn't wave or shout. She simply pressed both hands to her lips, tears streaming down her weathered cheeks, and nodded once, proud, unbreakable, complete. Sterling approached as Sophia climbed down from the aircraft. "How did it feel up there?" "Like coming home," she said simply. "Like Dad was right there with me." "He was," Sterling replied. "And he always will be." Legacy of Truth. 6 months later, Sophia sat at her desk in her bedroom, writing in a new leather-bound journal. At the top of the page, she had written, "Lessons from the Sky," by Sophia Rodriguez. She paused, then began to write. Justice isn't always loud. Sometimes it hides in silence, in data files, in voices that were never meant to be heard. But when truth finally breaks through the fear and the cover-ups, when it climbs above the lies and corruption, it soars. My father taught me that flying isn't about conquering the sky. It's about respecting it, understanding it, and finding your place within it. The same is true for fighting injustice. You don't defeat it by being louder or angrier. You defeat it by being more persistent, more careful, more truthful. Today, I received my private pilot's license. Tomorrow, I start advanced aerospace engineering courses. Next year, I'll begin working as a junior safety consultant for Sterling Aerospace, helping to design systems that will keep other pilots safe. Some people ask me if I'm afraid to fly, knowing what happened to my father. The answer is no. I'm not afraid to fly because flying is how I honor his memory. I'm not afraid of the truth because the truth is what set us free. Every time I take off, I carry his voice with me. Every time I land safely, I prove that his sacrifice meant something. And every day, I work to make aviation safer. I know that somewhere in the sky, Marcus Rodriguez is proud of his little girl who refused to stay quiet when it mattered most. The desert wind still blows across Arizona, but now it carries different stories. Stories of courage, justice, and second chances. Stories of a girl who trusted her instincts and changed everything. And sometimes, if you listen carefully to that wind, you can hear the sound of engines in the distance, carrying dreamers toward horizons they never thought they'd reach. Sophia closed the journal and looked out her window at the stars beginning to appear in the darkening sky. Somewhere among them, she imagined, her father was still flying, no longer bound by gravity or fear or the lies of corrupt men. She smiled, knowing that tomorrow would bring new flights, new challenges, and new opportunities to honor the truth he had died protecting. In the aviation world, they now called it the Rodriguez Protocol, a mandatory safety verification system that required independent confirmation of all critical flight systems before deployment. It had already prevented 3 potential disasters and saved countless lives. But to Sophia, it would always be something simpler, her father's final gift to the sky he loved, delivered by a daughter who refused to let his voice be silenced. The wind outside her window carried the distant sound of aircraft engines, commercial flights, training planes, corporate jets, all of them flying safer because one man had been brave enough to speak the truth, and one girl had been stubborn enough to make sure the world heard it. Justice, she had learned, doesn't always come with sirens and handcuffs. Sometimes it comes with the quiet satisfaction of knowing that the next pilot to trust their instruments will make it home safely to their family. Sometimes it sounds like engines in the distance, carrying tomorrow's dreams toward clear skies and safe landings. Author's note: this story is dedicated to all the whistleblowers, safety advocates, and truth-tellers who risk everything to protect others. In aviation, as in life, the smallest voice can sometimes carry the most important message. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and become a part of our Everyday Life Stories community. Where are you watching from? Drop a comment below. We love hearing from our amazing viewers around the world. Did Sophia's courage inspire you? Have you ever had to stand up for what's right when no one believed you? Share your thoughts and experiences in the comments section. Your stories matter to us and to our incredible community of readers who believe that truth and justice are worth fighting for. Don't miss our next thrilling story. Hit that notification bell so you'll be the first to know when we publish new tales of courage, mystery, and triumph. Until then, keep flying high and never stop believing in the power of speaking truth.